You're on.
Hi. Hi, my name's Tim Palm, and I'm a veteran. I'm from Warren, Minnesota. I graduated in the class of 1981. Um, I joined the National Guard. I was one of the few people I know that went in my junior, senior summer. And then when I came back after basic training, I was able to complete my AIT after, finish high school, and then I went to AIT. Um, and there's a couple interesting stories. So they when you went to the National Guard, because I was under 18 and in high school, they had my dad and me sign this contract that I would definitely finish, and graduate. That was a big thing because they wanted you to graduate high school. So I signed all that. I went off in July of 1980. Was finished the basic training. It was very short back then. This
Where was
was
that at, Tim?
after. What's that?
Where was that at?
Oh, that was Fort Benning, Georgia. It was infantry school.
Okay.
And so I did the 6 weeks, which was standard 6, 7 weeks. And then they just started shoving us through AIT. And one day I called my dad and I said, "Hey, Dad, I guess I'm not coming back." He got upset and he was calling the representatives and the senators. And he went on a rampage. And one day myself and about 20 other guys were pulled out of formation, and you got a half hour to pack your stuff. You're flying home. So then I came home, finished high school, in Warren, and did all that. Graduated at the bottom of the class, which is okay because I graduated. I wasn't planning on doing anything. Then I finished AIT, and at the time I was signed up to do at a ABTI, which is now the community colleges, but to be a heavy equipment mechanic.
Can we go
And
back a
my
little
brother
bit?
Lionel.
Can we go
Oh
back a little
yeah.
bit? Can you tell me a little bit about what basic was like for you?
So basic training for me, I had been in sports. I'm not a huge jock, but I'd been in sports. I'd been in track, football, wrestling. I was kind of a goof off and kind of the funny guy. Um, but you still had to do all the calisthenics. You still had to run. You still had to do all your work. And when I went to basic training, um, it was a big shock for me because I was one of the youngest guys there out of like 250 people. I was probably the second youngest. There was one guy that was like days younger than me. And it was kind of a shock because I hadn't been out of Warren. I'd been traveling and stuff, but I hadn't been out to Warren. And I ended up in the deep south, which is Fort Benning's outside Columbus, Georgia. And it was a big wake up call because, you got people yelling at you. I couldn't understand the accent down there. I mean, I did the best I could. And when you screwed up, they just make you do more push ups. That's all it was, just a push up camp, I call it. But it was okay. The food was good. I wasn't very picky. We'd wake up at like 4:35, which, coming from Minnesota, it's not that unusual. Working in the summer in the fields and stuff. But it wasn't. It wasn't physically it wasn't hard. Mentally, it was a little tough, but it was kind of just a big eye opener. And I did well. I mean, I didn't have any problems. I didn't want to quit at any time.
What were the billets like?
And the next Well, this in when I went to basic, so they had a split service, they call it, or split training. You do your basic and then you go back for AIT. So when I was in basic in 1980, the weather was horribly hot, and we were hitting 110-degree days, which is not unusual for Fort Benning, but it was prolonged. It was like weeks of it. Um, and fortunately, we were in one of the newer barracks, so they had air conditioning and stuff. But sometimes it's almost better if you just acclimate and not have to go in and out of air conditioning. But it was okay. I mean, the billets were good. The everything was fine. The food was good. Everything was great.
Did you
I
know
came back
anybody?
home. No, I didn't know anybody. Didn't know anybody at all. I mean, I left. It was like I said, it was the only one there. I ran into some people that were from the Minnesota Guard, but they were in different platoons, so you really like hang out with people, just your kind of platoon and squad. So, but it was good. The training was good. It was very quick, and I just realized the other day, I'm like, I went through infantry school and basic, and I never even learned how to shoot. Well, I knew how to shoot a pistol, but they didn't even offer shooting pistols like the 45 back then. It was every day. It was so tight that if you went to sick call, they could bump you to the next
Class.
I forget. They had a name for it, like retread or whatever. I forget what the
Mm-hmm.
name was, but they'd recycle you.
Right.
And I was like, not going to get recycled. So I didn't go to sick call. I got sick one day. I was like, nah, I'm going to just battle through it, man. It's nothing. So it was okay. I mean, it was it was a really good thing for me personally because I accomplished something I was very proud of. So, and I got paid. It was like $400 a month, but still, making money over the summer was always nice because then you had money when you went back to school.
Sure.
So, and then I went to tech school and I did that for a while. But in
Did you go
1981,
from basic right to AIT?
well, no. So they started me at AIT, and then they pulled us out. We came back, finished up high school, and then I went back.
Okay.
And this time I was in the older barracks, and it was all National Guard split training people. So it was Minnesota. It was all over the whole country. It was all National Guard. The whole company was 200 some guys, and we were all in the same boat. So we went through infantry school, but I had it made because some of the guys had gone to Fort Dix, they'd gone to Fort Jackson, where it wasn't nearly as strenuous. Because infantry school, they kind of push you a little harder. They got the Ranger school there, and they got all that. Everybody's kind of pumped up. And for me, I was used to it because it was just going back, step back into the routine. Whereas some of these other guys were like, "Holy cow, we don't have a soda machine." I'm like, that's all done. We're at infantry school, man. It's so. And one of the senior drill instructors remembered me from the year prior, which was unusual, but it happens. And he was kind of a brute, but at least he knew me. He knew of me, or he remembered me. So, and I just finished up AIT, and I was active National Guard. I was like National Guard. I'm going to do this for 6 years, and it'll help pay for whatever. Right? That was the idea and I was thinking when I went to tech school. My brother had joined the Navy, and we were corresponding back and forth. And he told me, like, "Hey, look, Tim, you should join the Navy. It'll be better. You're part-time in the Guard. Unemployment was horrible back then. I don't know if you remember. It was pretty high if you didn't have a
Yep.
job.
Yep.
You're a young guy coming out of school. You couldn't find anything. I applied around town in Warren. I ended up doing some farm work, but it was such low pay, and you're basically making other people rich. So I ended up joining the Navy, and they put me in delayed entry for a year. Well, about 9 months. So I left in '82, and I went to Great Lakes, and I had my service time from the Guard, which was nice because when I joined, that tax onto your pay. That counts for your pay and grade. So I joined as a gas turbine mechanic, and that was a very wasn't brand new, but it was fairly new. It was a newer rate. So in the Army, everything's rank and MOS. In the Navy, it's rate. So that rate is your pay, and then also what you're doing in your job. So I was a gas turbine mechanic, and I signed up and got third class right out of A school. So you do A school and C school. So I was able to get accelerated advancement, which was nice. And then after, I think it was 82, then 83 in October, I got orders to a ship, the USS Copeland.
Where was that
And the
at?
USS Copeland, that was in Long Beach. So what I had to do is I left Great Lakes. I had to finish a hot plant school that was a 4-week school in Philadelphia. So back then, if you had a car, they would pay you mileage, they'd pay you hotels, they'd pay food, personal owned vehicle, POV, instead of flying. Otherwise, they just give you a plane ticket and a little bit of cash. So I drove from Chicago when I finished. Went back home for a week, and then headed out and bought a brand new car and headed out to Philadelphia. Was there for a month, and then my orders came through because I already signed my orders, but the paperwork back then took a while. So the packet comes through with there's another check stapled in there for you to travel from Philadelphia all the way to Long Beach, which was really, really good because more mileage, more money.
Mm-hmm.
And being a young guy in a new car, I didn't stay anywhere. I just slept in my car, ate McDonald's. I remember getting Spam and just eating cold Spam because I'm kind of weird that way. Like once you get used to those sea rations, you could eat anything cold, I think. And it didn't really bother me. It was kind of hardcore about that stuff. So I drove cross country, visited some family, went back home for a bit, and then I ended up in Long Beach. And the ship was underway, and there was a classmate of mine that we had both pulled orders. So he showed up, and I think it was about 2 weeks the ship pulls back in. And so we go with our packet of orders and uniforms and get on the ship. And I remember the first day it was completely nervous. I've gone to infantry school, I've been to Georgia, I've been to Philly, but I don't know what being on a Navy ship was. This is the first time I saw the ocean. So I got on the ship and I started following somebody, and I turned around and I got lost. And that's one thing about a Navy ship is once you get inside the ship, if you don't know where you're at, you're kind of screwed. So I wandered around, and it was the weekend of Columbus. It was the Indigenous Day was Monday, so it was like a 3-day weekend, and it was also when the Beirut barracks was bombed that weekend. So that was kind of like all over the news. The bombing, the Marines passed away, the truck bomb, suicide bomber. It was kind of like a wake up for the whole military at that point.
Yeah, I remember that 260 killed, something like that. Yep.
Yeah, and then they also went after, I think it was the French or British in another building. I mean, there was a whole attack, and I'm on a ship and this is happening, and you're like, wow, everything's kind of accelerating pretty fast. But the ship was good. I met a few people from Minnesota on the ship, became friends with them, still friends with a few of them.
What kind of ship is
yeah,
this?
I wish I should have sent you a picture. It was a fast frigate.
A what?
It was a fast frigate.
Okay, frigate. Okay.
A frigate's it's like a destroyer but with one propeller, and we had half the crew size, half the weight. So the ship weighed about 4,000 tons, which seems like a lot, but Navy terms it's tiny. And the destroyers were around 9,000 tons, and they had about 300 people. We only had 180. So it was a small ship, small crew. I worked in main propulsion engineering. I thought I was pretty good because I'd gone to technical school for diesel, so now I knew gas turbines. And I was on that ship for about 62 months. So that was like my first duty station. I was stuck there.
62 months.
There because,
wow.
Yeah,
it's a long time.
Well, what they had was if you took if you accepted the accelerated advancement, they'd called it the advanced technical field. If you accepted the E4, then you signed up another 2 years, and they kept you on your first duty station.
So 62 months, Tim. So what did you do? You go out for like so many months and then come back, or what?
So what I do is we were in Long Beach. We were doing some training, and the ship had this was October, November, and in March we were going on a Westpac. Westpac is Western Pacific. So it's kind of exciting. We're building up to that. I had a car, parked my car in a storage place, and we went on Westpac. And I swear it was the best pleasure cruise you could ever have. We went to Hawaii. I ended up going to Guam. I met up with Lyle. Lyle was stationed in Guam there,
Mm-hmm.
and he came back. He got married in the Philippines, and he came back, and we hung out for a week. Took some leave. The ship ended up leaving there. Went to Hong Kong, and then we ended up going south to Australia. And Australia had just bought two Navy ships, U.S. Navy ships. They bought the same fast frigate. So we ended up going down there, and they were running in Darwin, and they were running all these dignitaries and military intelligence. They all wanted to see what the ship was like. So we had Australians. And in Australia, they take their beer drinking and time off very serious. So in the U.S., you would get underway. It might be midnight. You would get underway. They didn't care. It could be Christmas. You get an underway. There's no holidays or anything according to the Navy. You get underway. You do your job. You enjoy it. That's kind of how it was. But in Australia, they would get underway Tuesday afternoon, be underway Wednesday, and then pull in Thursday night because they didn't want to interrupt their weekends. So we had Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday for Liberty, which was awesome. So we did that for 2 months, and it was a lot of fun. I was a young kid. I say kid because I don't even think I was 21 at the time. And, they serve alcohol there to anybody. As long as you're military, they don't care. They like to drink beer in Australia, and they like to drink and party. And so it was a good time. And then we left Darwin and went to Perth and stayed there another week. And then we ended up doing the rest of the Westpac. I don't want to go into all the details, but I ended up going to Korea, Japan, like I said, Hong Kong, Thailand, Philippines. We spent 6 weeks there. And then on the way back, we spent a lot of time in the South China Sea, and the Sea of Japan, doing training with the USS Midway. And we were plane guard. And the Midway is a museum, and I always tell people, like, oh, yeah, I was on deployment with the Midway. Not on it, but we were with it. People can't believe it because it's...
You say you go to these countries, you went into port too, didn't you? Or
Oh, yeah. But they give us liberty at every port. Like how Liberty worked was you'd pull in, let's say on a Friday, duty section would stay on the ship unless you had to offload stores or unload stores, and then you just leave and you get Liberty. You just take off and come back on your next duty day.
were there
So you
any
didn't
of
have
them
to
that
check in every day.
were there any of those countries where they wouldn't let you go on
Oh
that?
no, it was great. No,
Yep.
this was '83. There was really no terrorism in the
No
at least
conflicts.
not in the Pacific. Yeah, there was no. We didn't have to worry about. But they always said keep a low profile. Wear civilian clothes, keep a low profile. I remember one time we were in Perth, and they said don't go downtown because they're having a demonstration. They didn't want anybody getting caught up in it. And the next thing you know, we're walking around and we're in the middle of this demonstration. I'm like, wow, we got to get out of here. But, so pretty uneventful. Nice. It was a nice travel. Nice, able to visit places. Educate myself on different cultures, and that's it was great. I'm single. I'm a young guy. I get to enjoy all this. So
So
and then
what were the living conditions in his ship?
oh, and the ship. So I was very lucky. The ship I was on was only a year old. It had been commissioned about 10 months before I got there.
Oh wow.
And it was all brand new, brand new for me and brand new for the Navy. But we had air conditioned berthing. We had, racks were 3 high like the old school, but we had enough storage. And the engine room, we had extra storage that we could, we got stuff overseas, we could store it. But the food was decent.
So when you
The
say
work
racks were
was
three high, what What's a rack look
Oh,
like?
so it's, so on a lot of videos and stuff like TikTok, when they have the sailors show stuff, there's one that's at the bottom, it may be 6 inches off, and you open it up. It has all your storage for all your uniforms and civvies and everything. And then the next guy's in the middle, so he's kind of waist high, and he has the same type of locker where he opens it up, a little arm comes down, you can do your stuff and then close it. But the top guy, he had to use a couple square lockers, so he kind of got screwed on space. So that's why it was always nice to be bottom or middle. Top was always a pain to get into too. So if you were tired, it was just hard because there really wasn't ladders. You just had to like put a foot here and then kick up and grab and pull
Hmm.
yourself in. And we
So,
had curtains.
so what were the shifts like? I mean, did you work 8 hour days or 12 hour days?
Oh, so the way the Navy worked in engineering is um, when you were underway, you would just stand your watch. So you could be three section watch, which means there's two other guys, and you have to rotate through the 12-hour day. You could have four section, or sometimes five. It just depended on if people were trained or not. It takes about 6 to 8 months to get trained to know all the equipment, what to do, casualty controls, and you're out in the middle of nowhere, and it's very important that the ship doesn't burn, that you have propulsion, that we're not like causing environmental leaks and stuff like that. So we've just had to just maintain the whole plant engineering wise, fuel, electric, everything.
What was your main job?
And my main job was to basically take care of, like, be a watchstander in the engine room. And then I eventually moved up where I was a scene leader because everybody in the Navy is a firefighter. So I became a scene leader for Repair 5, which was the engineering. I was kind of like the fire chief for engineering for about 3 years. And that was a good job. And that helped me after I got out of the Navy because I learned how to work environmental from that. It was very good. It was a very good training, realistic training. We had some fires, but not like World War II where you had kamikazes coming in. It was pretty just basic, do your job every day. It's import was harder than underway. On being underway, you just stood your watches, then you'd go hide somewhere. You couldn't go into berthing until after they inspected around 11. But after 11, you could go down there, and if you weren't on watch, you could watch TV. We had a VCR. You could bring tapes and watch tapes and stuff like that. But import was tough because you had to work a standard, 7:30 to 4:30 day. And if you had a watch, because if it was your duty day, you had to stand your watches. So you might get off at 4:30 and have to go right back into watch till 8 o'clock at night. And then they would import, they do fire drills, you have to load stores, you have to do all this stuff. And then you would stand two watches. So you had the 4 to 8, and then in the morning, 0400 to 0800. And that was kind of a pain because sometimes you'd be up till 10 and then you'd get to bed and you wake up at 3. And so it caused a lot of sleepless nights. I mean, sleepless days too. So in port, like I said, it was harder. Underway, they were a little more lenient.
So how long were
The
you on the,
haircut standards.
yeah, how long were you
Oh, go.
in the water? I mean, sailing.
Oh, I was on
And
the
when,
ship the whole time. So I lived on the ship.
yeah, but
So we didn't.
you'd go to
Oh,
a port once in a while, but how long, what's the longest you were out?
about 94 days straight. And
Just
that
over
was
three
in the
months.
Persian Gulf. So I ended up doing 3 deployments. The first deployment was the pleasure cruise. The second deployment, I ended up being in the Persian Gulf. And that was when Iran and Iraq were shooting tankers. And we kind of weren't really involved as much. This was 1986. We were there, we saw a lot of stuff, but the U.S. hadn't really, had not gotten involved into escorting flag tankers. We were escorting U.S. like ships, and mainly U.S. ships, but we weren't escorting the reflagged Kuwaiti tankers at the time. What we were doing was we'd go over the Straits of Hormuz, go in the Gulf of Oman, pick up, one or two ships, and then like 5 other ships would follow us in. They would try to be close to us because we're guarding our ship, so they figured they'd get a free ride. So we'd bring them through, and then we'd hand them off to another ship.
So whenever
you'd
you
go back and forth.
whenever you were out, you were with other ships.
Now when we went on Westpac and deployments, usually it was independent. So
Okay.
we could be at sea for a couple weeks if we managed our fuel and everything. But we could be at sea. We'd unrep with ships. I mean, the Navy's really has force projection. They've got underway ships, that just are there for stores and refueling. So you just going along, and all of a sudden we're going to refuel, and like, where are we going to refuel? Well, you pull up, do an unrep with the ship, and it's amazing how the U.S. has designed and built these systems and organized it. So when you would refuel a ship, they would pump fuel to you at 3,000 gallons a minute at 80 psi over the water. So you don't stop, right? The ships basically pull up alongside each other, and they shoot lines across, run hoses, and they would pump fuel through 8-inch hose, and you could fill up the whole ship from about halfway to full in like 20 minutes.
Wow.
It was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And then at that time, some of the ships could refuel you, but they also had stores, so they would fly helos over and drop pallets of ice cream and food and parts and all that. So you could technically be underway for a long time. And the ships during COVID did that a lot. But back then, I think 90 some days was my longest. And you count those by beer days. And you get 2 beers after 45 days at sea. So we had a couple times where we had beer days, and then when you made the second beer day, then you knew you were at sea pretty long time.
Oh,
But
2 beers and
on set,
wow,
yeah,
that's it.
After 45 days, you get 2 free beers, and it would they would hit you hard.
Well, could you get them where you could pay for them?
No, that's all you got.
That's all you got.
Beers. You just show up. They'd hand you 2 cold beers. You had to drink them, and then you could go relax. And I remember drinking them after watch. Drank my 2 beers, and I'm like, I'm ready for bed. So I went passed out at the bed. I wasn't drunk, but if you
Of 2
don't
beers,
drink for a while. But no, the food underway was good. We didn't have a lot of storage space, so after 3 weeks, if we were underway, then they'd start breaking out the canned food, and they'd have all frozen food by that time too. But you'd run out of all the perishables. And I remember one time we were eating I don't know if you're familiar with those cod. It's a deep fried, the little patties, the rectangular patties.
Mm-hmm.
We call the 3x5s. I remember eating those. They would you're underway a long time. They could stack those in the freezers. So you'd have that, mashed potatoes. It was all dried mashed potatoes. You were in. You know what it was like. You start
No, I never had it that good.
Well, I had sea rations, but that's one reason I joined the Navy was mentally. I said, at least I know where I'm going to sleep, and at least I'll have hot food most of the time.
Believe it or not, I had K rations at one time.
Oh yeah, those are the dehydrated ones. Yeah.
No, they were from World War II.
Well, our stuff was pretty new, but so I did that deployment, and then my last deployment in '88, my last year on the ship, I ended up serving during it was Operation Earnest Will, and it was when they reflagged the Kuwaiti tankers, and what we would do is we would basically you could do picket station, which was let's maintain a zone and just do circles in an area, or you could escort ships and drop them off with other ships, because you would pick them up and you just worked one section, then another ship would move them for another section and another section. But that was basically considered my combat time because we were in a war zone at the time. Since we had basically were going up against the Iranians more than the Iraqis. But we were there to just kind of like, this is what we're doing. You guys have your own little war off to the side. Now, when I got there, when the ship got there, this was March of 1988, and our ship, we had a missile launcher, right? So we would launch these missiles, and they could go 60 miles, and our ship was mainly anti-air, so we could take out helicopters, fighter jets, cruise missiles, incoming missiles, all that. So that we had Harpoon missiles and Standard missiles. Well, our missile launcher hydraulic boost pump broke, so we couldn't bring a missile up on the rail. So we had to switch availability. We were ordered to stay on station, but we had to leave because we couldn't get any missiles out. So the ship that took over for us was the Samuel B. Roberts, and the next day they hit a mine.
Mm.
We were on our way out through the straits because we had to go. They had like in Vietnam, they had like Yankee Station or whatever. They'd have like supply ships, and then they had off the coast of Oman, they had the USS Samuel B. Gompers, which was a destroyer tender, and we pulled up on there, and they had a Tiger team and the parts, and they came on and they fixed the missile launcher. And at the same time we were out there, that was when they had Praying Mantis operation go on, when the U.S. took out Iran's Navy.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
A lot of people don't know, but
yep.
Yeah, so they bombed their destroyers. They blew up a bunch of old oil platforms, because there's oil platforms all over the Persian Gulf.
Mm-hmm.
And they blew some up that they were using for spying. Like they would set up recon and they'd count the ships, and then they would send the bog hammers, the speedboats out. And so after our missile launch got fixed, we went back on station, and then the Samuel B. Roberts made it back into port, and then they ended up ferrying it back to the East Coast on a cargo ship that was built for like handling oil rigs. So
All right, Tim, hang on a second. We're going to have